take risk without knowing that everything is going to work perfectly, because it's simply not. You know, invention is really hard, and change and adaptability, we're talking to today like it's just this easy. It's actually pretty hard to do that from an industry perspective and from a government perspective both. So I think we have to recognize that we are at a time, and I think organizations like Matt is a really good example, and General Gainey prior, really good example of pushing the authorities we already have for positive outcomes. So I think there's a balance between increasing our behavior and our cultural change to accept what we can do, and then some change that helps us with flexibility on money and colors of money, and those things are all great. But I think at the end of the day, the majority of that is how we approach it, and I think Matt's team is a good example to do that.
Great answer. I just want to touch one thing real quick on the C2. I agree with General Thurgood completely. So we have 5 services is how I would think of it for counter UAS: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and SOCOM. And so as we went through our testing and evaluation for Replicator 2 to assess capabilities and suites of capabilities, one of the things we looked at intensely was C2. We have 3 different C2 platforms right now. I don't think that that's a secret. And one of the things I'm considering is, should we go down to a single one? As we looked at those systems, not only did we look at the cost to procure them, the cost to sustain them, and the number of people required to operate them, but we also measured quantitative data for how effective are they against these most current threats, and then qualitatively we did an assessment. We used soldiers who were not trained on these systems, and they came to the exercise. They got basic training on the system, and then they were responsible for operating the system. And then we gathered feedback from them, qualitative feedback on usability. To General Thurgood's point, I mean, if it's not intuitive, shame on us. So that is how we're looking at it, and you bring up a great point on C2. Second, for small business, I owe you more detail, but we want to incorporate small businesses. We need small businesses. We need that innovation. We need people with new ideas, and we've got to be able to have a consistent dialogue with you so you understand what our challenges are, and then you've got to have a way to come back to us as a department and say, hey, I think I've got an idea, or I've got a prototype. And I should be able to tell you that entire ecosystem across the Department of War, hey, here's where you come when you've got a new idea and a prototype. And then you're at TRL 3, 4, 5. Here's where we're going to do that testing and evaluation. We're going to give you feedback. And then once you've got a mature capability and you're ready to be assessed, we want to do that in a transparent manner so that we can continue to get that support from small businesses.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for an enlightening panel discussion today. I appreciate it. My name is Tom Dobbs, just graduated from the Air Force after 33 years in Intel, and I'm now with a small tech company. I have a 2-part question for General Ross. So I was very encouraged by your discussion of the architecture and the integration, interoperability, all those things, and the modular open systems architecture. And you mentioned that the requirements are actually fairly well written for the systems and capabilities. My first question is, to what extent has your team or the broader enterprise developed requirements for the architecture that leads to the modular open system approach? The second part, sir, is you are at the top of this enterprise now with JIATA 401 overlooking this multi-agency effort. And you alluded to the different pieces and components that are residing in places that you're aware of and maybe some you're not aware of. I would offer that you are also a sub-element of the higher echelon in General Gutlein's Golden Dome initiative. Because although he's not worried about counter-UAS stuff, a lot of the integration of systems and the architecture thing is a part of his broader architecture. To what extent is there integration of those efforts between the broader Golden Dome and with JIATA 401? Thank you, sir.
2 great questions. First, for the requirements for the architecture, we actually want feedback from industry as we go through that. I could go into a closet with our smartest folks, and we could come up with a white paper, and we could write it on 1 page, or we could write it 10 pages. Either way, it would probably be incomplete without your input. And so we want feedback from industry as we try to establish those baseline standards. Two, on the how connected are we to the Golden Dome and General Gutline's effort, Golden Dome of America? I think we are complementary. You can't have one without the other. And it's a little bit rudimentary, and I'll probably show my age, but several years ago, there was a book about a starfish and a spider. And it talked about two different types of organizations, and one was largely networked and centralized, and that's the spider. And if you cut off the head of the spider, you killed the spider. The starfish was different, and I always thought of it as below the spider, but if you cut it in half, cut it into pieces, you just get more starfish. And so I think about distributed counter-UAS in that manner. And so we have to have the ability to operate independently and autonomously. And so if that's in Alaska, if that's in Maine, should those systems be able to talk to one another? Yes. Do I have to share the data from every counter-UAS system across the nation in real time? Probably not. I should be able to if I needed to, but I would overwhelm my architecture pretty quickly. And so knowing what we need to, I know that we need to be able to share, and I know that we need to be responsible about the information that we choose to share so we can protect those more exquisite capabilities that will protect the nation.